So, I'm going to introduce John Dugan. We have a special guest in the house for y'all. I think y'all about to get blessed. And any of my writers, my actors, my screenwriters, listen up. Anybody who is an artist in general, listen up. Entrepreneur in any way, listen up. So, John Dugan is the Director of Program Quality, Design, and Assessment for Youth and Engagement Programs at the Aspen Institute. Previously, he was a full professor in the Higher Education Graduate Program at Loyola University Chicago. They just played in the Final Four. They were amazing. They lost, but they were amazing. They got to the Final Four out of 68 teams. Where he taught courses on leadership, human development, and multiculturalism. Prior to that, he worked in leadership education at the University of Maryland, College Park, and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Please give a huge round of applause for Mr. John Dugan.
Thank you, sir. Hello, everyone. How are you? How's everyone doing? I need a big yell now. We're in the excellent. Now that's right. That's what I like to hear. That's Philly, right? We got the energy, we've got the time here to have a great conversation, and I cannot tell you how excited I am about who's about to come to the stage. And I'm just going to be real honest, I'm kind of dorking out. I'm trying not to be a fanboy because I'm probably more excited than you are. We have with us today M Night Shyamalan, iconic filmmaker and wonderful artist, someone who does great work for the community. How many of you have seen the movie Split? Give a holler. Yes, right? So good. How about The Visit? Yeah. Anyone seen Signs? The Village? Right? We could keep going on and on. The Sixth Sense? Yes, right? All of these movies that have profound effects on us. And I want to take this one step farther. 3 things that make him ideal to be with us today. Very special to be in our presence, learn with and from. First of all, he's a Philly guy. Someone who knows this community, has done a ton for this community. You see the community in his movies. Second thing, this is someone who has transformed film. We're not talking about someone who's popping out sequels, popping out movies left and right, working for a machine. He's someone who's a creator and an artist, an original director, someone who writes his own work. So when you see a movie by M Night Shyamalan, you know you have something that's new, something that's provocative. The other piece is, fundamentally in almost all of his movies, we see themes that relate to all the work that you've been doing here about what is the world, how does it operate, how can we change it, who are you, how is there something special ingrained in every single one of you out there, in every one of his characters, even if they don't know it. And then the last piece, this is someone who hasn't just rested on his laurels, but is giving back to the world through his foundation, working with grassroots leaders like you, looking for ways to enhance their work, supporting them, trying to change the world for the better. So without further ado, I'd love your help to give a round of applause for M Night Shyamalan.
Thanks, man.
Thank you so much for being here.
Kind words.
So we're going to spend some time talking a little bit about Knight's life, what he's interested in, and then get to some questions from you all as well.
Sure.
And I'm wondering if you could just start by talking to us a little bit about what the city of Philadelphia means for you, what it was like growing up here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I grew up here. My parents moved here from India. Actually, they went back and had me in India, so technically I'm Indian. By birth, but really just after 6 months I came here, so really a Philadelphia kid. And when I got married, we were making a decision about whether to go to Los Angeles or not, so I could pursue filmmaking, and decided not to do that for being just being a human being. It always scared me, Los Angeles, and being there, and Philadelphia was so much who I am. And it ended up being a very difficult thing because everyone's over there, 3,000 miles away. But in an ironic way, it became my greatest strength because I was writing things that were very different and talking about things that were very specific to me. And I would drive by a crop circle because we live in Pennsylvania, and I would write about crops in a crop circle in a field, and all these different thoughts that came from being in Philadelphia and that distinct voice. And we'll talk about that a couple times. gave me great power. The more specific I was actually made me pop from the group.
And what does the city mean for you? So it translates into your film. Why have you stayed here? Why do you keep sort of investing in the city?
Well, like all Philadelphians, we're irrationally loyal, and I'm going to the Sixers game right after this.
All right.
16 in a row. I don't know if you know that. We're about to break the NBA record tonight.
This is really exciting.
Yes.
I have to admit, I don't know much about sports.
It's incredible. That's all you
excellent.
need to know.
Good, great.
We're killing
great.
it. We're killing
excellent.
it.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so it's a, very it's funny. I was joking about it, but we're all super loyal. Philadelphians are very kind of we're very protective of each other. We're very tough. We're like we're tough on each other, a little scrappy, but we're very loyal. We'll be the first one to fight for each other. You know, and oftentimes you find. You'll see a lot of people that go to college and then come back here and settle down here in Philly. And actually, I believe this kind of movement that we're talking about here is why Philadelphia has become one of the best cities in the country, if not the best city in the country for every metric that you have, whether it's food, education, you name it. Yep. We're at the top of everything. And it's because of this that there's a loyalty to come back to where we grew up, and because we love it so much.
So you've had this basis in Philadelphia. Talk to us a little bit about what drove you into filmmaking specifically.
Yeah.
How did you persist in that world?
Well, I guess I grew up. My parents were both Indian, and they're immigrants, and so they're really didn't know much about anything that went on here, and so it took us a few years to get a Christmas tree before a lot of tears and like everybody's getting presents, and so then we got a Christmas tree. No, they really didn't know what was going on, and they were they're both doctors and they were working all the time, and me and my sister were figuring out what it's like to be a kid in the United States and figuring it out on our own a little bit, and there's just a great feeling of. Growing up here, that we were accepted. I felt from our friends, but for my parents, when you're an Indian immigrant, they come here and you're supposed to become an engineer and you're supposed to become a doctor. That's it. Pick one of those two. That's it. Those are the things. And in my family, everyone in my family is doctors. Everybody, all the uncles, aunts, everybody's a doctor. And I was strong in academics, and they were like, well, he's going to become a doctor. And I decided I'll tell you why I went there, but then I decided to go to film school. And I was the first one in my high school to apply to college, first one to get in. Wow. And I only applied to one, and I applied to NYU Film School and got in early on a scholarship. And then I told my dad, the moment I told my dad he was watching the Flyers game. He's a big Flyers fan. And I came in and I said, Dad, I applied to film school, NYU's film school. I got in. I got a full scholarship. You don't have to pay anything, and I'm going. He didn't even look over. He was like, that's my dad. He doesn't get angry. He just ignore. He has. I remember how he was seated too. He had his hand on the sofa, and he just didn't look over. And he was like, okay. And he didn't look. I was standing in the door of the family room, and I walked away. That was the moment of like. You basically, essentially that you've thrown your life away, kind of thing. Because at that time, for an Indian family, for me to say that, and not much different now, to come in and say you want to become a filmmaker, is essentially saying, Mom, Dad, I'm going to become a rock and roll star, goth rock and roll star. You with me? And it's just insanity. It was insanity. And I can tell you, there's a lot of reasons why that 18-year-old kid version of me made that decision. But I felt absolute about it, 100% absolute about it. Now, by the way, we'll skip everything and come to where it is now. My dad now is so like, he makes sure everyone knows he's my dad. So if he goes to buy some gum, he'll buy it with a credit card just so the cashier will go, wait, are you related to? He's like, yes, I am. But now it's flipped the other way.
Right.
You go to the houses, like everything's like a shrine of like every magazine cover and everything. I was like, Dad, take all this down. You didn't want me to go to film school. But what ended up happening, I think there might be an interesting story about why I chose film.
Yep.
Was, I was 14, and in those days, when you go to the airport, you could actually go all the way to the gate with the people that were leaving. And my grandparents were going back to India, and it used to take forever and ever. The whole family would be there to send them off back to India, and we were all there. And I was waiting, and I walked to the little store there, and they had a little rack of books. And on the rack of books was Spike Lee's book about the making of She's Gotta Have It,
Okay.
which is his first major film. And I asked my dad if he could buy it for me. And it was just there, and it just, and I honestly tell you this, if that book wasn't there at that moment, I'm not sure we'd be having this conversation. Maybe you guys would have come to see me as a doctor, and I would have been, but you probably wouldn't have seen any films. And the book was Spike delineating his emotions and the struggle to make his first film. And I read it, and I was like, he doesn't know anybody. He just made a movie. I thought like Hollywood was this thing way over there, a magic thing, and it showed me he didn't know anybody. He didn't have family in it. He just made a movie. And then I read where he went to school. He went to school at NYU Film School, and that was it.
And the seed was planted.
Yeah, planted. Then I took my dad's 8mm camera, started making terrible movies. Then I went and got another camera, made more terrible movies, and I just did that my whole high school years, making just terrible movies and forcing everybody to be in them, in the class and the neighbors and anybody that my sister's friends would come over. I'd stop, don't say, stand over there and say this and hold this thing and pretend you're dying and whatever. And they'd be like, ah. Oh. And so I have all these terrible, terrible movies from that time period, and that led to my certainty of this is what I want to do.
So when you think about that moment where you're standing with your father and he doesn't say anything, and you have the fortitude and the strength to say, I'm going to still go do this, and to then go and experiment, what drove this passion that you knew you had for film into a reality? How did you translate that?
I've learned a lot of things about how people achieve things, nowadays. So, for example, like, you can look at my life in two different ways. You can look at all of your lives in any way you want to look at it emotionally. So I'll give you one version. By the way, when I spoke to the Sixers, and I gave them a very similar thing I'm going to tell you guys right now, when I was talking to them about the team, about how to look at ourselves and how to look at the things that happen in a game, through the lens of emotionality, and making sure you're looking at them through a positive lens of where am I going? How can I choose the things out of the things that are happening that are correct? The referee got the call wrong. How do I react to that? All those things I was talking about. So one version of my life could be going, he made his first movie at 21. He sold The Sixth Sense at 25 and became the highest selling screenplay writer in the world. His movies have grossed $3 billion. The last movie became number one. I'm one of 3 people in the world that has ever had number ones in 3 different decades. Everything I've ever written since I was your age has been made into a movie. And it just seems so easy, right? That's a version of my life. The other version of my life is I made a movie with my family's money and friends' money, which failed completely at 21. Made another movie for Miramax that's failed completely. I mean, no one saw these movies. I was done. And the reviews were horrible. Everything was terrible. I sold the script to Fox. They fired me immediately as a director. I made a bunch of movies that were really successful, and then I made a bunch of movies that people didn't like, and I've been on the list as worst directors of the year so many times, and saying you're done, you're done, you're done. I made there was a moment where no one would make a movie with me, just recently. No one would make a movie with me, and I decided to go make, and this is another story we could talk about, where I decided to go make a movie by myself and spend my own money and go for it. And let me just tell a little bit about that story a little bit.
I'd love to hear it.
So
We would.
So there was this moment where everyone was like, he stinks, and we don't believe him in it anymore, right? And no one's calling, no one's accepting, and and I'm in Philly, right? So I don't hang out with them. Our kids don't go to school together. We're not meeting each other on the street. There's no personal connection of any kind. It's always been just based on my work. And so I said, I'm really unhappy too. I was really unhappy in the way I was making movies and all. So I said, you know what? I loved filmmaking. I always dreamed that if I was a professional basketball player, that I would put in my contract that I was allowed to go play street ball. that's in my contract, because actually the reverse is actually probably true in most contracts, so you don't get injured, but I would insist on it so I could just remember what it was like to be, play basketball for fun. And in this way I said, you know what, I'm just gonna make a movie. I'm gonna ask no one's permission. And so I took a loan against my house, and I had an idea, and I just went away and started shooting a movie. I didn't ask anybody's permission, I made it. And I shot the movie, and 6 weeks after I shot the movie, I got nervous because I didn't get paid, obviously. I didn't get paid, it's been 2 years. I took the mortgage on my house, and as I said, the playing field out there was against me. And I got nervous, and I was like, you know what, I just need to make sure that this is gonna get sold. So I went to Los Angeles, and I showed the movie only 6 weeks out, so I just shot it, to all the distributors in Hollywood. And we went to a theater, and I showed it to them. Every single one passed. And came back, and I was talking to my agents, and they basically gave me the, I know you worked hard, it didn't work out, you didn't, try, next time we'll try again, kid, sorry. And, maybe we can get some of your money back, I don't know if we can, and that kind of thing. So it's over. It's literally, this is the feeling, right? It's over. Everyone's against me, it's over, the system's against me. I come home, I fly back from Los Angeles, just like numb almost, right? And my daughter is at home, and she had this puzzle, and she'd gotten this puzzle. And I just said, let's just work on the puzzle. So I sat down at the dinner table, and it's a 1,000-piece puzzle, and we dumped it out. And we started working on the puzzle, and I'm like trying to find a piece, just one piece. I'm like, this is impossible. This is just, I was literally like, this is impossible. And we're just quietly doing it. And I found one piece, and we put it there. And it took about 15 minutes to find this one piece. And then I went, and something just went click for me, just emotionally click. It went, the reason I'm going to find the next piece is because I know there is a piece in this pile that fits in here, because I know there's a picture here, because the box tells me there's a picture here. So I'm going to keep working at this, and all I need to do is find the next puzzle piece. And one day I will have all the pieces done, and the picture will be done. And I went, you know what? I don't know how this is all going to work out for me, but I'm going to just find the next piece. And so I went into the editing room, and I just made one scene better. That's it. I just sat down, and I said, how can I make this one scene better? I was like, oh, you know what? This is a better take. Oh, if I put this sound effect here, that's a little scary. Ooh, if I come in here. And I made that one scene better. And I did that the next day, and 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 the next day. And suddenly I had this feeling about the movie and a vision about the movie. And I kept on going and going until I felt like it was ready. And there was one company that passed that said, I wouldn't mind seeing it when it's done. Okay. And so I finished the entire movie and called them up and said, I finished that movie. I want to show it to you. I want to show it to you in a movie theater, though. So I flew out to Los Angeles, and I showed them the movie in a movie theater with 500 people who went bananas. And they bought it that day. That movie was The Visit, which became the biggest independent movie of that year. And I owned it.
That's huge.
And then I owned it. Then after that, I paid for Split again. I mortgaged my house again and paid for Split again. And then Split went out and became one of the biggest thrillers of all time. And again, I owned it. And now I'm doing the finale of Split and Unbreakable, which is called Glass, which is going to be amazing. And I own that,
We're
too.
excited for that, right?
So you can see the journey of feeling powerless and feeling powerful that I went through, right? I had this weird thing. When I was a kid your age, I met somebody and I was like, I'm going to be a filmmaker. Like I went to a palm reader once and when I went at NYU, and I was like, they're in the streets, they have all these palm readers and the things. And I was like, what am I going to be? And she was like, oh, you're going to work with the government. And I'm like, get out of here. I'm going to be a filmmaker. And I was like, you're a fraud.
Right.
And it was like that. It was like that kind of belief system. Yep. And then at times the world just pounds you down. And and you lose that. You lose your way, and you're going, you're supposed to be like this, or you are this, or, this isn't good, or that, we need you to do that, and you just stop hearing your own voice. And I've went through that. So, for me, everything I do personally now, both when I speak or when I'm, the foundation work, or, when I talk to the studios or whatever, it's coming from this. I want people around me that can support a belief system in me to make me better, challenge me, and move me to a better version of myself, but never doubt me, And we're moving to that place with every decision we make. It's constant. You have to constantly work on this. And this is the other thing I would love to say. I know I've met everybody in the world. The good thing about being famous is you can pick up the phone and call anyone in the world anywhere, and they'll be okay to meet you. I've met presidents, prime ministers, I've met supermodels, I've met Nobel Prize winners, I've met everything, and they're exactly like you. They're as nervous, as scared, as unsure. I've literally, I've spent time with, everybody, even, President Obama or anybody, where everyone is so similar. It's so poignant and wonderful that we all go through this feeling. I hope what I just described felt very similar, familiar to you. I believe in myself, I don't believe in myself, and, and it feels impossible and all of those things, so.
We sometimes put on these masks of perfection and don't realize the struggle that's behind it, and that who we are is really what we have to drive from, I think, to achieve our goals.
Yeah, to that point, I've realized that if you have three things, you will achieve anything. Like if you have energy, like everything is about energy. So you make choices that get you a lot of energy. You sleep right, you eat right, you get the right people around you. That builds your energy. Energy, tenacity. Tenacity is I'm going to get up again and again and again and again. And you have the ability to recalibrate. If you can do those three things, if you have those three things, there's zero that you can't achieve. You're just constantly going at it with tenacity and energy, and you continually reiterate, try again, and it just nothing can stop you. That combination of the three will get you where you want.
Well, Knight, let's pivot on that point and talk a little bit about your work with your foundation.
Yeah.
And you've written this nonfiction book about education systems and how to improve them. What are you learning from this work with grassroots leaders and about education that you'd love everyone in this room to know?
Gosh, well, there's two things I guess you touched on. So we have a foundation, and our basic model is we find leaders, grassroots leaders around the world that have kind of moved their communities against all odds, like super people. They just, like superheroes. They've moved the needle, and we come in, make sure that that's accurate, that they did move the needle, and then we ask them, what do you want? Whatever they want, we give them. If they say we need a well for drinking water, we need a bus, we need this for security, or we need to build a school or whatever, we support them. And we've learned that model works. It's been 100% working, and the impact has been gigantic, because when you find these leaders that have kind of naturally been vetted by life, they kind of have this innate balance of understanding everything in their communities. They also have the buy-in of their communities, and so the money that we give them is funneling. We have a tendency in America to kind of hero it, kind of come in and say, hey, you know what you need this. And that almost causes as many problems as helping. When you make things, you take the ecosystem and you throw it out of balance, whereas we're coming in through the leaders that are ingrained in Philly, in country, outside, in all the other countries as well. And we found the impact is incredible that way. And basically we finding the people that are in this state that I talked about, which is they have absolute belief and they do these three things, and they just keep iterating and iterating with this incredible amount of energy, and they go, I'm going to get this school in the middle of this war, I'm going to make a school, and boom, it's impossible, can't do it. 3 years later, there's this school. And that we find these people that have this thing, this it thing, and support them.
Yeah, I love this idea of how do you have a healthy disregard for the impossible. And everyone in this room is doing that right now through their challenge projects, and I think there's a real nice alignment there. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what you're seeing in education systems and what you're learning about youth and how that might relate to folks in the room?
Well, I wrote a book on closing the achievement gap, and the achievement gap as a term means basically the gap that exists in the United States between inner city, low-income schools and their white suburban counterparts. That gap, an achievement that exists. It has always existed, and it hasn't really moved that much. And what is that? Now, this is obviously specifically important to a lot of people in this room, and has been very moving to me. And it came from me visiting schools in Philadelphia and feeling upset and wanting to understand it. How did we get here? And it was a fascinating 5 years. I spent 5 years. Our foundation did research and researched every study at that time that had come out that reached a certain criteria of that we set, metrics that we had set. My wife has studied statistics and all. She's an academic like you, so fellow
nerd.
Yeah, fellow nerd, and tried to find answers for it. And it was really fascinating, and we can go into great depth about what we found. But I would put it really fascinating. First of all, the reason I did it is because nobody could give me an answer. So I went to the teachers' unions, I went to the heads of education, I went to this, and they all had their theories about why this exists. It's because of this, it's because of that, and they were very heated, as you probably all know, about this subject. And I said, I love that you guys are all excited and all, but I don't want to hear your opinions. I'm from a family of doctors. I'm Indian. Give me some data. So I was like, so what's the data? And are charter schools better? Are traditional schools better? How does this work? How does that work? And after 5 years, it was just a fascinating thing that happened. For 2 years, I couldn't figure out anything. I was basically, if you stopped me at the end of the 2 years, I would have been like everybody else, and I would have had my opinions about what that list should be. I believe it should be this, and I believe it should be that. And I didn't want to be another opinion. And then there was a real epiphany moment that happened to me with the book. And I don't want to get too much into the book, although we could talk at length if you guys want. I obviously I have a lot to say on it. But I went to dinner with our doctor friends who are kind of brilliant doctors, and one of them was telling me how he was the head of the hotshot residents here at Penn. And he tells them on the first day, the hottest, young residents, he would tell them, you need to tell your patients this. If they do these 5 things, if they sleep regularly, if they have a balanced diet, they exercise 3 times a week, they don't smoke, and they work on their mental health. If you do those 5 things together, your chances of getting every disease known to man plummets down to below any medicine that you could ever take. However, if you don't do one of those things, everything buoys pretty close back up to normal. Okay. And I went, why is that? And he said, because the body is a system, and it needs to be thought of like that. And then I went, maybe that's what we're not doing when we're looking at the data. So what if the education system is a system? It's not one thing. You have to do a group of things together. Is there a group of things when they're done together slams this gap closed and makes it so it disappears? Is there something like that? Is the data there? And believe it or not, we found that in the data, it all lined up like that. And we're like, oh, wow, the data says if you do these things, you will close the achievement gap. And then we went and checked the schools around the country that have closed the achievement gap or were closing the achievement gap, and every single one of them were doing these things. Yeah. So as a kind of a blind test on it. So it was really fascinating. So that's what the book's about. And then I went around to the government and the Congress and told them about all the stuff that the data found. And again, I said I don't have a horse in this game. I just wanted to tell you what the data says.
So we're all trying to survive and thrive in this system that we're in right now. So talk to us a little bit about what do you know now at this point in your life that if you had known at the age of everyone in this room would have made a measurable difference? What do you wish you knew when you were in high school?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I knew this as an adult too. And I wish I could even, internalize what I'm saying, which is what I know. It isn't what you know; it's what you do, right? That's what people say. It's what you do habitually is who you are. You can know everything. Obviously, my dad's a doctor. He's the worst patient on the planet. He says he knows everything, but it's what you do that is who you are. But I would say, my own agency is what I would have advocated to my younger self and said, don't doubt that, your own agency in every circumstance. I told you that puzzle story to give you a real recent moment of that where I lost my agency and then found agency. And by that I mean, your own power to change things. And by the way, I'm giving the commencement speech this year for Drexel, and that's really what I'm going to talk about to them, is about their own agency.
So we use this term agency.
Yeah.
How does that show up in your life?
Well, as I said, I feel like, if something were to stand in my way now, I feel like I have control over that. There's a Greek philosopher named Epictetus, and he talked, this 2,000-year-old Greek philosopher, and he would talk about how to understand this balance, because it would seem to you that I'm lying, that that's not the truth, that everybody isn't powerful. But you're mistaking we'll call it the universe, what the universe does versus what you do. This is what Epictetus kind of clarified, and this helped for me. So for example, you may get in a car accident. The universe, how you respond to the car accident is your power, and this is the part you have to believe in, and this one you have to say, the universe is a benevolent place, that it wants you to grow. That you have to accept. And if you do that, some people call it God, and they have their particular stories about that, about what they perceive that to be. But if we talk about it as, kind of the universe is a benevolent place. And so, for example, like, maybe you guys have heard of The Secret or something like that, any of those books like that. That's the same idea. So we're very strong antennas, and whatever we're focused in on will continually come to manifest to us. The universe doesn't care that it's good or bad, that whatever you're concentrating on, they will give it to you. I don't feel good about myself. Great, I'll give you more things to make you not feel good about yourself. Here comes that guy, here comes that teacher, here comes the dude around the corner, and the universe will just keep putting that in your way. Not because it hates you, that's because that's what you're concentrating on. So again, there's a difference between, let's say, for example, like, in the Secret book, they talk about like, oh, I don't want to be fat, I don't want to be fat, I don't want to be fat. You're concentrating on fat. So the Dunkin' Donuts will open up right next to you, right next to your house. And I want to be healthy. It's a very different energy that you're asking the universe to put. And I don't want to get too, new agey about it, but I actually believe this, and so much so that I'm like, really focused in on my inner thoughts to make sure that I'm putting out what I want. If I put out, like most of us put out muddy, we put out muddy, and that's what we get back. Some good, some bad. I'm not sure how to feel about myself because I'm not sure how to feel about myself. So then the events that come continually reinforce, I'm not sure how to feel about myself. Some good, some bad. I'm putting out muddy, like that. And so when I have put out absolute certainty like that, you absolute certainty comes, And it happens in so many ways. I'll give you a story like about our agency, This story might be a little older for them, but in the sense of who I'm talking about. So there's this kid in like the 50s, and he loved the blues, American blues, but he lived in London, and he just loved it. And he just anytime he wanted to listen to it, and and he would go to all these stores, back then only records, and if a record came overseas, he would grab it and try to buy it, and he just couldn't get enough of it. And he loved this music, and and one day he was at a train station, and he sees another 15-year-old kid holding Chuck Berry album under his arm, and he's like, that's all he did was think about this American blues, and he went over and he said, how do you have this album? He said, oh, I love American blues. You're kidding. Oh my God, what's your name? And all stuff. And he goes, my name's Keith Richards. What's your name? Mick Jagger. And did that happen by chance? Or did he put out an energy? Is it possible he's on that platform and never sees that Chuck Berry album, never notices it, right? Was it there always? Are there Chuck Berry albums everywhere for us that we don't notice? Are we sitting there, instead he looks over and sees the mom yelling at the kid? Maybe he's looking over at that because that's what he sees in the universe, And I have a million stories like that of like attracting like. And only reason I say all of that is to show how powerful we are, right? So if you wake up in the morning and most of your day is, you're a big antenna, so you're putting all of that out, you're going to get a lot more of that coming at you, And so this concept that I just talked about, if you believe it right now, your life has changed. If you don't believe if you think I'm a liar, or I'm just talking, or he got lucky and all of that stuff, and if you find a way to dismiss what I'm saying, you will continue. You will feel the lack of agency, and you will feel a victim of your circumstances. And basically, ultimately, what I found in the research of the data was we've had the discussion about this achievement gap incorrectly. What everyone has been focusing on is what's wrong with our schools, what's wrong with our inner city schools, what's wrong with our inner city schools? And the data said nothing. The data said the problem is not the schools, it is what we're doing to you guys before you step into the schools. We have done the reverse of what I just said. We have taken all the agency away from you. We have said this country is not yours. We have no value in you. People that look like you, sound like you, act like you have no place and no power in this world. And that has been so reinforced before you walked in that door that school that's the same as the white suburban school can't overcome that belief system. And the things that have closed the gap are the things that deal with that belief system right there and have changed that belief system for those kids walking in those doors. So it was a fascinating conversation because when I started talking about it, I said, actually, it's us that is to blame. The TV shows, the movies, the conversations, the stores on the block, everything, walking across the street when you see somebody that looks like this, every single thing compounded, the message that we're giving to those kids. So as you can see, it's all about the same conversation. One other thing I want to talk about that I was thinking when I was driving over here, they did a study on group dynamics, and there's two studies I want to talk about real quick because I think it'll be illuminating. One is they gave a group of MBAs, business majors, and a group of engineers and a group of professionals, and they gave them a task. They said, we're going to give you 20 pieces of uncooked macaroni, 1 yard of tape, 1 yard of string, and a marshmallow, and you need to build the biggest structure in a very limited time. And they gave it also to a group of kindergartners. And they gave them a little limited time, and guess who made the biggest structure? The kindergartners. They beat the engineers, the MBAs, everything. Why? How did that happen? How could that happen? How could that possibly happen? They analyzed and find that what ended up happening, the kindergartners kind of circled around each other. They didn't even speak. They kind of immediately started trying things. So basically, they went in with energy, tenacity, and they iterated. They iterated so many times. Tried no, and they were like, no, try this, no, yes, okay, try this. And they tried hundreds of times more things than the MBAs who were like, let's sketch this out. If we have 20 macaronis, and the tense structure will be this, and if we have 1 yard, okay, calm down. Let me just give you my idea. All of that was going on, and basically they found that when you don't feel safe in a group, you can't contribute your energy, and the group doesn't gain your perspective fast. So the kindergartners, ironically, were doing it perfectly. They were iterating as fast as they could, and they made the structures sometimes double the height of the adults, and all of that stuff. Then the second study I wanted to talk to you about was they gave groups tasks. And then they put one Confederate in the group. And a Confederate is somebody that's fake, that they put into the group. And the Confederate's job was to act depressed and to stop them. So he would come in and sit in the group and be like, this isn't going to work. This just not super aggressive, just bring him down. This isn't going to work. I don't know. I don't believe it. It's not going to work. Sometimes they would just the Confederate just put his head down on the table. Just like that. That's all. Just sit there for 5 minutes while the leader was talking and just go like this. And they found any group that he was in reduced the achievement by 40% of the whole group. What he was doing was changing the dynamic of the group to say, it's not safe. We're not safe here. We're not close, we're not safe. I want to keep us apart. That was all the messages he was giving to the group. It's really interesting because I'm sure you guys experienced various versions of this, and there was one group that he couldn't affect. And that group had a leader that kept approaching him with positivity and saying, hey, you okay? You okay? He goes, yeah, no, I just don't think it'll work. Well, why don't you think it'll work? Well, I think because these are dumb ideas. There probably are, but why don't we try them, and then we'll see what happens, and then maybe we can try. The best part is that we could be dumb here, and he kept on approaching it with positivity and the tenacity, and the guy couldn't help himself. The Confederate, he started to go along with it, and they achieved at the same level that they were achieving, even though the Confederate was in there. That was a kind of to bring it around to leadership. Yep. But the overall thing I was talking about was how do we evoke agency in ourselves, you know, in a school system that, in a country that is telling you the opposite of what I just talked for the last 10 minutes.
This is incredibly insightful. Let's put some agency into this room
Sure.
and invite some folks for questions. I'm going to ask folks to raise their hands and wait until you get the mic. We'll turn it on, and then we're recording live, so we'll get all of this for others to see as well. Who's got a question? All right down here. Share your name and your school, and have at it.
My name is Kyrie.
Hey, Kyrie.
What's the basis behind Cloverfield? I mean, is that a good question?
Oh, say that again, the question? Did you ask about Cloverfield? Yeah, I didn't make Cloverfield, but I can tell you as a viewer.
That would be a different movie.
That was a J.J. Abrams. That's yeah.
That's okay. Let's come over here. Yep, right here.
By the way, I once was on a plane, and the stewardesses get excited sometimes when I'm on the plane, and this one stewardess came over, and she just stopped me and was so loud on the plane. And then she was like, I just have to say, I'm such a big fan. I just love The Ring. And I was like, I didn't know what to say. I was like, she was so excited. I was like, thank you.
No.
I don't know what to say.
I get Jimmy Kimmel all the time. Jimmy
That's
Kimmel.
true.
Yeah,
you do.
I just
Jimmy
run
Kimmel.
with it, though. It's helpful for me.
Okay, so my question was...
In your name and which school?
Oh, my name's Jordan Mayer, and I'm from Morel Dobbins. My question was, what did you mean by pass? They passed up on the opportunity, or they gave you a pass and said, we'll do it?
Pass? You're referring to the word pass?
Yes.
Yeah, that's basically an industry term that means we're not buying it. We don't. We're not interested. We're passing on the opportunity to work with you. So it's a no, basically a rejection. Yeah, we still have that list, by the way, in our office.
For posterity.
Of everybody that passed, because they're all gone now.
They're probably crying about it now.
No, they're no longer. Most of the 90% of them aren't even in the industry anymore. But they're the people that replaced them are calling all the time. So we keep that thing up to remind.
As a reminder, right?
Yeah, humility.
How about back here in the black shirt? Name and school for us.
My name is Delorio D'Amico, and I go to Constitution High School. And it's an honor to meet you, by the way, Mr. Shyamalan.
Thank you, man.
So what made you pursue your career to become a filmmaker?
Well, I guess, I was born at a specific time. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book about, outliers and how outliers, and is how much luck is involved, right? So his thesis was there's a lot of luck involved, that Bill Gates is born next to the one school that has computers, so he as a teenager, he could go there and spend time with the very earliest computers. And if he wasn't near there, maybe he doesn't. That was what Malcolm postulated. I have actually proposed the Rolling Stone theory, which we'll call the Rolling Stone, that's slightly incorrect, that if you put out there, that will be there for you, an opportunity, because the universe wants you to grow. You will happen to meet and happen to upon opportunity after opportunity to continue doing the thing that you're spending your energy on. I grew up at kind of almost the optimal time. So I was 7 when the first Star Wars came out. So my parents took me to see the movies. I saw Star Wars at 7. Then I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark when I was 12. And this was like religion, I don't know if you guys have ever been in or seen those kind of religious frenzy kind of places where everybody's, that was like me watching a movie. I was like, what? It was like life had changed. And so, the greatest filmmakers of all time were making the greatest kind of movies aimed at my age group, and just awakened me. And religion is probably not an unusual, an inappropriate word for what I felt from the original Star Wars, the original Raiders. Like I was seeing these artists doing this stuff, so it ignited me.
We have time for one more question.
Oh, that's all? We could do a few more. We could do a few more.
Let's go over here. In the blue. There we go.
My name is Carlos Quinones, and I go to One by Ray. So you've been successful through your career, but what is one thing you regret when you look back at it?
Yeah, when I went to that period where I was questioning myself. You know, like for example, I'll give you for example. I made a movie called Unbreakable, and Unbreakable was, if you haven't seen it, is about comic books. Basically what if comic books are real, which is basically the end. It connects with Split, if you guys have seen Split, and when I made it, which was 2000, nobody was making comic book movies, and they didn't want to sell it as a comic book movie. And in fact, the actual conversation was comic book movies won't sell. Nobody wants to see a comic book movie. Those are weird people at conventions. You don't want to do that. And I was like, well, I love them, and they mean something to me. The mythology means something to me. And I remember, like, it opened, and it was received not well. And I remember sitting on the couch. It was Thanksgiving when it opened, so I was sitting on the couch Thanksgiving, and I was lying on it. And if I could go back and tell my younger self there, because I had thought I made my best movie of my career, and I felt like saying to myself, you felt such peace from the creative thing you were doing and where you were going and what was making you interested. Keep going. Don't try to get acceptance right now, because again, sometimes the universe is going to put things in front of you to make you better at what you're doing, right? You don't try to attack and try to when you try to do stuff that the universe has control over, it'll smack you. Like it'll say, you want to be a great songwriter? All right, I'll make that happen. Don't tell me how to do it. You know how I'm gonna do it? I'm gonna make your first 3 albums fail. That's how I'm gonna do it. So don't get involved with what I'm doing. Just keep focusing on what you're doing, and you're gonna get there. I'm gonna give you every opportunity in the world, because you needed those 6 years to meet this person, that person, work on that, go to that club to work on that. You needed that, and that's the greatest gift I could give you as the universe. And so this dynamic that I'm speaking to you about, I wish I had said, I felt such power from hearing my voice and doing these things, and I started to question it because I wasn't getting immediate gratification. And that's a falsehood of like, hey, if you do the right thing, you're going to get your rewards right then and there. That's not how it works. So that's probably what I would tell my younger self.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Just a couple more.
One more? Yeah.
I feel bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. James, pick someone up there that we can't see with the lights.
I know this group's getting neglected over there.
All right.
Okay. My name's Nevaeh, and I go to String Theory Charter School. And my question is, what inspired you to make Split, and what is the symbolism behind Split, or specifically Split personalities?
Yeah, well, I really enjoy. It's funny. I mean, as you can tell now, you're gonna hear how all the theories of what I think about affect everything that I'm doing. So, DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, is something I believe in. Some psychologists don't believe in it, but I believe in it, and it's basically a disorder that's very specific. So the provenance of the disorder is very dark. So it's if you have been physically and sexually abused repeatedly between the ages of 1 and 5, your brain sometimes bifurcates and makes it so that didn't happen to me. It just learns to do that and says, that did not happen. This is now who I am. That incident didn't happen. And once you've learned to do that, your brain can continue to do that forever. And so you have all these different versions of yourself that are coexisting at the same time. So if I had DID right now, one version of me is the filmmaker talking to you. Another version of me is the French student who's studying his French work. And another one is this angry blah, blah, blah. And they're all coexisting at the same time. And they literally are coexisting. And what you find from the disorder is that when they're in the different personalities, their physiology changes. So if I'm Sarah with diabetes, you can actually take my blood and I will need insulin. Your body actually shifts. And it's insane. If one personality is allergic to bees, they get stung, you need to go to the emergency room. They'll switch in the emergency room personalities, and the swelling will go right away. They're not allergic to bee stings. The second personality, and you watch it go right down. That's how much power we have. That's how much our thoughts can affect us. All medicines are weighed against the placebo effect. You guys know what the placebo effect is? It's just if you believe this was a cure, you cured yourself. And the medicines have to beat the placebo effect. That's how powerful the mind and the body are connected. And basically, DID is the farthest form of this connection between the mind and the body. So through this incredible trauma that these individuals have experienced, they've learned a way to fight back and to exist in the world. And they have this incredible ability. Now they can do things we can't do. And so Split's really about that conversation of, are the broken the more evolved?
Yeah. Let's do 2 more questions. How about over here? So do we have a mic that we can get down here? All right, come on, Sam, come on down. There we go. Name and school for us.
My name is Teron Bullock from Morel Dobbins, and I like your universe theory thing, by the way.
Thank you.
I would like to say, what is something you could say for people who for people who give up and stuff? Let's say something inspirational. I would like to hear from you.
Yeah, the only thing I can say is, it's hard for us to internalize the things that I'm saying. I have a hard time, even though I know it's the truth, and I've seen everyone that I know, and as I said, I know world-class athletes, I know this, I know that, everybody's achieved everything, I met everything. They're all just as scared, and they all have doubts, that kind of thing. It's hard for us to internalize it. There's that thing where if you can fold a paper, and why our mind can't hold certain concepts. We can't hold it. Like you and I can't hold this concept of agency strong enough. It's just something that we need around us the right people to constantly say, you're very powerful. And so, for example, this idea, you ever heard the thing where if you could fold a piece of paper 50 times, how thick would it be? Have you ever heard that? So if you could actually take a piece of paper and fold it and then fold it again and then fold it again, if the piece of paper was big enough to do that, how thick would it be, right? Take a guess. How thick would it be? It would just say if you could fold it 50 times, how thick would that be? That big? The actual answer is from here to the moon. And our mind can't conceive how a paper that thin could double that quickly and become that thick. And that's just math, right? So if you think about the 49th fold, you're doing halfway to the moon, right? So half the distance to the moon was covered on that last fold, right? So if we can mathematically show, they do it with pennies and, pennies per month and all of those things. And why I bring that up is because, it's hard to internalize something that you're that powerful. Yeah. That you could be literally, if I say, it sounds so trite, you could go and do whatever you want. You could become the president of the United States. What I'm actually telling you is it's a certainty that you could become the president of the United States if that's what you wanted. That's what I'm saying to you. That's so hard. It's just like the 50 folds of the moon. So that's the one thing I would try. I keep trying to tell myself that, and I'm trying to tell others that. You are insanely powerful, dude.
That's huge. Awesome. Well, one more question. Let's go to the back up here.
Hi, I'm Gabby from George Washington High School.
Hey, Gabby.
And when I was watching Split, I was really wondering why, I don't know how involved you were in writing the script, but I was wondering why the movie took more of a horror tone than a dramatic tone. Why was the movie more focused on Kevin struggled through people not believing in his DID, but more into, his female personality and the hostages she took?
Yeah, for me, is putting things in the context of fear to trigger kind of a belief system. So for me, whether we're talking about superheroes or ghosts or aliens or whatever, those are just proxies for conversations about belief. What we've been talking about is a conversation about belief in our own agency. And most of the time, my stories are about characters realizing their own agency. So really, it's about the story, really, to your point, and I would argue that I did make a drama, I'm just pretending that it's a horror movie, is about a young woman who was abducted and learns actually from her abductor how powerful she is. So that's a drama. I can make the drama of just that, and I hoped I did do that. So for me, I use the roller coaster of the fears a lot of times, thriller format, to tell deeper stuff, because a lot of times if I come at you directly, it feels like lecturing, or here it comes and you shut off. You know what I mean? Whereas if you come from when you're scared, all of your senses start to heighten, right? You get to a certain place, and I have found that people are more open emotionally at those moments in a storytelling kind of juxtaposition. So I use that to get to the drama as much as I can, and so hopefully it's something specific that balance is something specific that I try to do. Thank you for the question.
And I have a comment.
Oh.
I really wish that his psychiatrist wasn't killed.
You just told somebody they didn't see it. Some people.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
Sorry.
But she's kidding. That didn't happen.
Well, I want to thank Knight for being here with us, and I want to thank you all for the great questions. Let's give him a round of applause and a huge thanks from the Aspen Challenge.